The Stone Disclosure.
Good morning, everybody. This is your boy Trey from the Stone Disclosure, back with another episode. I have missed y'all so much, and I'm really, really happy for the community now. So what we're going to get back into is how trauma shows up in relationships. And the one way that we can really hone into that and see exactly where that comes into play is when everyone's attachment styles kind of start to show. Now, if you really think about it, attachment styles are really like a blueprint for how we seek intimacy and a lens into how we actually view relationships. So attachment styles really is a precursor for what someone's emotional resilience is. Now, emotional resilience, my opinion, is how well can you handle being in those heightened emotional states? How does that show for you in any type of relationship, whether it's romantic relationship or a friendship? So the attachment styles really break down into three. Most people like to say four, but I'll explain why I think it's a three. You have your secure attachments, you have your anxious or your preoccupied attachment style, and you have your avoidance style, and they're a lot more dismissive and disattached. Most people kind of don't stick to one. They kind of cycle from style to style, just really based on the type of relationship you're in and the other people involved in said relationship. And it kind of takes on more of a disorganized attachment style more than anything that's succinct. The main thing that we really have to kind of look at is a bunch of factors, right? How do we manage the external influences that are around us? How do we deal with the negative people in our lives? Whatever parental challenges that we had, because those created these traumas that we are now kind of trying to unbox and that we're bringing into other relationships. Society does teach a lot of different things on this, and we have to be very careful because then we fall into realms of things like victim mentality being a normal thing and trauma bonding and all of these things. So we're going to unpack this a little bit slower, but a little bit more direct as opposed to the original video that I did. So what is an attachment? An attachment is any type of emotional aspect of a relationship. How do you and that person, that other individual involved, how do you attract to each other? How do you function together? How do you make that bond together? And the bond itself is important because you're going to bond with people for so many different things. It's just, how do you show up in that type of scenario? Now, the first style we're going to look at, I think, is the one that everybody wants, which is your secure attachment style. It's stable, it's comfortable. It's a nice balance of like having your independence and your freedom, but then still having that connection to the person. It's a lot more free. You really trust that person, and when it comes to that, you have a comfort with intimacy. You have comfort with your independence. You trust your other partner really, really easily, and you have a good sense of self-worth in those relationships. They're often very good with communication. They can have those open conversations. There's a lot of trust there. There's empathy there. There's a relationship that's just so secure, and it may not be like easy. It's not to say that you're not going to have your issues and you're not going to have your problems. What it will say is, I know that we are different people. I know that we do have challenges, but I trust that you are safe with me and I am safe with you. So if we need to have those conversations, it's not a problem. I know it's not going to end in some fight. I know it's not going to be something where we're here today, gone tomorrow. We are going to be able to work through whatever it is that we work through. And you as that individual feel very safe in that relationship because you feel that no matter what happens, you're going to be able to show up for your partner, and your partner will be able to show up for you. And I think the idea behind that is you're in a space where you understood that they could leave knowing that they would come back. Now, secure attachment styles aren't really something that's necessarily like gained from childhood. It's more gained from the work you did outside of childhood. It's very, very rare situations where parent and child have a very, very secure bond. It is possible, but it's rare, if we're going to be honest. Usually our upbringings in life lead us on one spectrum or the other spectrum, where they're going to have more of an anxious outlook on relationships or an avoidant outlook on relationships. And it's after doing the work and after really like finding your center and finding your calm at the end of the day, that's where you start to really take that on. And that's where you start to say, yeah, I was very avoidant, but now I'm understanding how it works. Or I was really anxious and now I can calm down a little bit, because now I understand like these aren't things that are set in stone. I'm able to find that middle. And usually people who can sit in that secure attachment style, it's because they know how to regulate when things get a little out of pocket. So when you're getting to those situations where you feel very anxious about a situation, you're able to look at it and say, no, I get it. This does make me feel some type of way. I need to calm the hell down because I know my partner's going to be okay. I know that no matter what happens, we'll figure it out. So you're not really like in your feelings as much, because though you may get hit with that rush of emotion and anxiety, you are kind of able to regulate yourself and say, no, I'm going to slow this down. I'm going to look at it in the most logical and practical way based on the person involved. So the secure attachment style is something we internally have to look to achieve, because we're usually not born with it. We usually don't get it in our upbringing. The second style we're going to talk about is the anxious avoidance style. I've been on this side of that spectrum before, and it's not easy to navigate. I'll tell you guys this now. I think it was very hard for me. The anxious avoidance style comes from a fear of abandonment and a crave for reassurance. It's you're in a situation where you're not sure what's going to happen tomorrow. You're looking at every little microcosm of something, and to you, it's a big deal, and it really isn't. Right? It could be something very, very small. But the reason that you feel that way is because in your past life, you've had that fear of abandonment. You really feel like, hey, if I don't do X, you will leave. If I don't do Y, you will leave. Yesterday you said this, today you said this, you're gonna leave. It really is just like some chronic fear of that person just up and leaving you, and you're by yourself, and now you have to readjust to life by yourself. In this style, you're going to have a lot of difficulty with trust. Trust is your precursor. And these people tend to really look at patterns a lot and think, well, okay, well, this is off. For example, normally your person comes home and the first thing they want to do is like give you a hug. And then that one day they come in and they just want to just go by themselves, or they got to go to the bathroom, and you don't get that hug, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, why? What's wrong? Like, how did I not get the hug? Like, I always get that. That's like a standard in a relationship, and now it's not here. Or you're used to talking to that person, like they call you like after work, or they call you when they're doing this, or they call you when they're doing that, and now you're looking at like, oh, well, they finished work at like 4 and I haven't received a call. Like, is everything okay? Now, the attachment style itself is you constantly looking for that validation from that person. And that's what makes the attachment style in general. Having these little one-offs where it's like, yeah, it's a little weird you didn't call me on this day, but like when you're constantly sitting in that state of fear all the time, that's when you really start to see that attachment style kick into place. These people tend to, in relationships, come across as more emotional, a lot more brash, and like, always on edge. Like, you're always worried about how something can go wrong. Not to say that they never reach a stage of calm, because they do, But then outside of that stage of calm, anything triggers it and they immediately go to worst case scenario. They can come off as needy, they can come off as clingy, they can come off as unable to regulate their own emotion, and they're constantly, you guys gotta understand, they're constantly in this like fear of rejection the second something does not go according to the plan. And it's gonna be very, very hard to have a relationship in that sense, because you're in this constant like state where you're on edge and anything could just throw you off, and then your partner's just doing that, like they're just living their life, and I'm like, then you're like, what, why are you acting like this? Like, this is not a big deal. Okay, yeah, I called you half an hour later. Like, I don't understand why we're in this space. I don't understand why you're taking this scenario and you're blowing it up to the moon. It just doesn't make sense to me. So people tend to really like look at this and say, well, I don't know. And it really starts to cause a lot of problems, because you as that other partner, you feel like you're in a minefield all the time. You feel like you got to be perfect. You feel like you can't do anything wrong. If you normally call them at 4:30, you got to call them at 4:30, because then it leads to this whole like discussion. And I can't even really say it's a discussion, because you're looking at it as, here we are going to have this conversation about it, but they're already gone through like this emotional process where they've gone through these 7 cycles of thinking about this thing and trying to rationalize why it's different. And you're picking up the phone like, hey, why are we yelling? You know what I mean? So it's difficult to navigate, only because you've got to deal with that emotional element first, and then you come into that, all right, let's figure this out and try to get that. And as a person who's had that attachment style before, it is hard to be in. And I'm not gonna say that it was something that like I sat in a lot. It was just kind of like a cycle. And I'll get into, I'd say it was more of a disorganized state of mind than anything else. And I'll tell you guys what I mean by that later on. So the opposite end of the spectrum is your avoidant personality style. I've had this one as well. And it really prioritizes like its independence. Like, yeah, we're in a relationship, but I still want to do me. And like, yeah, I get it, but like I still want to take my time for me. And this one it's got its own issues. It's got its own issues. You really have a difficulty getting emotionally close with a person, because you just kind of want your space. And usually what you'll see is when a person is very, very avoidant, they may come across as like secretive. They may come across like they have something to hide, when in all honesty, they just want that space to kind of do them and figure them out. They don't, it's not a like stay away from me, you're annoying kind of thing. It's just kind of like, I have this thing that I have going on, and I want to understand and process it by myself before I engage with another person. Because what that's going to cause is, if I'm unable to regulate myself, I'm not going to put the best version of me out there for you. If I'm having a rough day and I'm at home trying to process why it was what it was, and why it was so difficult for me, and why I had these challenges, and I don't feel like my partner will understand, I feel like I have to process it for me. And once that's done and I can bring myself to that state of calm, then we can actually engage in anything else outside of that. It's interesting because the thought processes for the anxious and the avoidant are the same, but their process and how they deal with it is very, very different. Whereas like the attachment style is very like, tell me, and they're just like, I want to like release all my emotional energy, and I want you to be there for it, and I want you to be part of the process, and if you're not part of the process, I don't know what I'm going to do, because they're afraid to deal with it on their own. Whereas like the avoidant, they want to deal with it on their own. They want to be able to say, hey, let me handle this, let me bring myself down, then we can talk. Because if I talk to you in this state, it's not going to go well. And it's funny because they're both at an emotional high, but one's emotional high is very direct and in your face and very open and very out there, and the other is more secretive and internal. So avoidance tends to come across as very cold and very dismissive and very annoyed with people. And it's not, it's just they have a fear of how they're going to show up for people in that state, because maybe they don't quite understand how they feel, or they don't feel like they know how to express that to another person. So it's really like I'm keeping to myself to figure out what I'm going through, and then we can like re-discuss things after. Or I just need some space to just chill. I need to take some of these emotions that I have and just either deal with them or bury them, and then I can show up for you the way I need to. Now, in relationships, avoidants tend to have their own struggles. They struggle to form any like real deep connections. And it's not to say that it's impossible. It's just they don't put themselves in those situations because they don't like being vulnerable. Like showing vulnerability for them is like huge. They would rather hide in a hole and deal with whatever they got to deal with. And then when they come out as a butterfly, then you get the best version of them. This makes them very closed off. So it makes them very like almost afraid of getting close to people, because at the end of the day, it's like, I don't think this other person's going to understand my situation. I don't think I can go to this person and really express it because I don't feel like I can even understand it myself to express it to another person. So they're not cold and callous people. And I want people to understand that if you're dealing with an avoidant personality, we may tend to think that, oh yeah, you know, they just don't like me, or that, or I pissed them off or anything like that. And in all honesty, that's not the case. It's just they are trying to process their own things. And they're doing it out of a place of love for us, because they don't want to take their burdens and put it on you, because they don't even know how to deal with it. And it's interesting because both kind of have a lack of trust. If you look at the attachment style, they don't trust that you're going to come back. And the avoidant, it's like they don't trust that you can help them. So it's like one's afraid of you leaving and the other one's afraid of you being here and then them being misunderstood. So you have to give grace for both caveats, right? So now that we've kind of described the three, I'll say that most people kind of fall into the disorganized attachment style. And these styles aren't like locked in. You're not just always going to be an avoidant. You're not always going to be an anxious attachment style. You're not always going to be secure. Like I was saying with the secure attachment style, it's changes you have to make in yourself. You have to learn yourself, and you have to learn how to regulate yourself in order to reach that state, because that level is a degree of calm where no matter what comes, you are able to deal with it. You're able to look at it and say, yeah, I'm not feeling good today, but here's what I need to do. And in order to get to that secure style, the biggest thing that I think everybody needs is communication. If you have that anxious style and you go to your partner and say, hey, listen, I've noticed this and I've noticed this and I've noticed this. I'm concerned that, maybe we're not as connected as we need to be. I'm concerned that maybe we need some like quality time together, just so I can settle my nerves a little bit. Like, is that something you can help with? And usually your partner will be like, yeah, I get it, And if you're the avoidant and they come home and they're having a rough day, it's a simple, hey, listen, I'm not mad at you. Everything was just a little bit crazy. I do want to talk to you about it, but right now I just need to kind of calm myself. So I'm going to need maybe an hour to myself. Is that okay? And I don't know many partners who are going to say no. They may say, hey, do you want me to help you? Like, no, right now I just need that little bit of space. That's it. And then you come back. The problem is you always have to remember to come back. So if you're that anxious or you're dealing with that anxious person and you just need a little bit of space, it's just, hey, listen, I get it. I will give you the reassurance. I just can't do it right now. I'll come back. And if you're that anxious, it's like, oh my God, I want to deal with this right now. Hey, listen, I understand how you're feeling. It is a bit much. We'll come back to this. And then you go back and you talk about it. So most people kind of fall into the disorganized pattern. It's very inconsistent pattern of like anxious and avoidant personality. The struggles with these people, it's like boundaries and like emotional regulation is a challenge for them, because since they don't know how to balance themselves, you're switching between one or the other. It's very inconsistent, and it makes very inconsistent relationships, because one minute your person could be very like anxious type and they're just very like, hey, I'm here, like, hey, give me like reassurance, hey, give me this. And like, because they don't get that, they then become avoidant and say, hey, you don't want to help me regulate myself. F it, I'm gonna go do my own thing. So these ones are a lot harder, and I think I more fell into this realm because it becomes such an interchangeable thing. I've been in relationships with the avoidant. I've been in relationships with the anxious, and regulating the two was different because the needs were different, but the end results were the same, right? It caused them a lot of stress. If you're with an avoidant person and you're trying to broker that connection with them, it becomes very traumatizing to them because they don't feel safe in connections. So you asking for a connection is hard because they don't want that. Like, they're trying to do their own thing before they can come back to that. So sometimes you just have to allow them to have their space and talk to them and say, hey, listen, I get it. I know it kind of seems like you need some time and some space to kind of regulate yourself, and that's fine. I understand it. But we do have to come back together. So how about you take the next couple hours, do whatever you need to do, get it out the way you want to get it out. If you got to go into a bathroom and cry, go for it. If you got to go for a walk, go for it. You know, like, if you just need a few hours on the phone to talk to somebody else, do it. But you have to come back here because I'm here. So you have to come back to this relationship. Usually they're cool with it. Usually they'll be like, yeah, no problem. Like, I got it. Thank you. And you'll give them their space, and then they'll figure it out. And being with the anxious style, sometimes you just have to break it down and say, hey, listen, this is a lot right now, and I don't think I'm in a place to hear you properly. So what I'm gonna need is for us to, like, nothing's wrong. No one's mad at you. It's not that type of scenario. We're not going through some disconnect. It's just a lot to manage right now. So I just need that we can come back to this after. But you have to give them that reassurance to say, nothing is actually wrong. There is no threat to this relationship falling apart. It's just, at this moment, we need to do something else. Because sometimes they're looking at these patterns and these shifts, right? So they're like looking at this and freaking out and saying something must be wrong. No, nothing's wrong. I didn't call you because of X, or I didn't call you because of Y, or I called you a little bit later because of Z. Sometimes it's like, hey, listen, I was listening to this podcast and I thought it was really, really cool and I wanted to finish it. Or, hey, I had a really long day and I was just driving and listening to music and I just needed to decompress. There's nothing actually wrong. You just need to understand that we're in the exact same place we were yesterday. It has not changed. I just needed to change the pace for myself a little bit. And once you're able to kind of give them the answers that they need, and if they want to discuss it in depth, you give them the opportunity down the line to do so, it usually helps with dealing with a lot of that. Now, take into consideration that you can fall onto any side of this at any point in time, because you could be a person who was very, very, very avoidant before, and you now come across an avoidant person or a person that has tendencies to be avoidant themselves. And what happens with that is you now have two avoidant people, and then you'll start to see that one of them's kind of like, I kind of want you around. You know, they don't see in themselves how their behavior can, or their style of attachment, I should say, can affect the other person. But now, because you're with an avoidant person, you tend to be a lot more like, whoa, what's going on here? I'll give an example. If you're in a situation where, let's say, you are with a person who has a very avoidant style and they go off and do their own thing sometimes, and you're always the one who comes back to them, when that changes, you'll see that they'll be like, whoa, I don't know how I felt about that. I'll give an example of, let's say, two people are in a relationship and they have a fight, and the avoidant person, whenever there's a disagreement or a fight, they just go off and do their own thing and they don't say anything. They just, hey, I'll see you later, and then take off and leave. That person now does the exact same thing in like a retaliatory sense. They say, hey, you want to go and not tell people what you're doing or where you're going or anything like that? Fine, I'm going to go do the same thing. What you'll see happening is the first avoidant that did it, when they're now on the opposite end and receiving the same treatment, they're not going to like it. And I've seen this play out in real time. I've had situations where that's happened before. And then we talk about it, and it's like, I really didn't like when you did that. I'm like, yeah, how did it make you feel? Well, I felt unimportant. I felt like you didn't care. And like, I worry about you. And I feel like you didn't care that I worried about you. And I was like, yeah, that's how I feel when that happens. That's how it feels when you do that as well. So for me, like, I know how it feels. And now you're on the opposite end of it. And you can look at it and discern that I didn't like how that felt. So that's how that now avoidant person has that like secure style, because now they're like, I'm not seeking that validation anymore. You want to do you, that's fine, I'm going to do the same thing. But they actually don't like that treatment back. They want that person to come to them, they want that person to pull them back. And not having that person actually look at it and say, hey, I'm going to pull you back into the fold, they just left them and said, hey, that's what you want to do, I'm going to do the same thing. They actually don't like the treatment that they give off, but they don't realize that it's hurtful to people because they're not used to it. And when you look at like the anxious style, they don't like that pressure. So if you're with a person who's very anxious and they always need that validation and they always need that, hey, like, you didn't tell me that I was beautiful today, or hey, normally you do this and you didn't do this. When you start holding them to the same things, they don't like it either. And I've seen it in real time. I've done it in real time. I was with a person who was very, very anxious, and they would expect phone calls at a specific time, and anything that's off, it's like they're just on edge. So I started kind of exhibiting the same behaviors because like you're trying to regulate yourself. So I had situations where I called and I was like, hey, like, I called you didn't answer, what's going on? Oh, I was just doing this and da da da. I'm like, okay, but like, you can just tell me. Like, I'm sitting here thinking like, something happened, or like you're mad at me, or because like, and like they got flustered. They were like, but no, it's not like that, like, I have things going on and I'm doing this. I'm like, that's how it feels. So like, I think what happens is we don't realize how our personalities and how our outburst in relationships affect the other person, because in our minds, when we're thinking about it, that's normal, that's how you're supposed to act, that's how I'm supposed to be. They're not thinking on the other spectrum, well, how is this affecting my partner? Like, how are they perceiving this? Because they don't have those conversations. Everything they're doing is just for their own emotional survival. And when you go into survival mode for something like that, you're not thinking, how does this help a person? If you look at like an apocalypse happening and you just stole food from a tree, or you stole food from a chest, like, let's put it in context of video games. We've gone through playing the adventure games, The Legend of Zelda, where you're busting open the chest and you're taking people's rupees. You're not thinking, hey, those rupees belong to somebody. You're like, oh no, I need them. Hey, I need this potion. This is gonna help me on my adventure. It's gonna help with my survival. But you're not thinking, hey, I stole this from someone's house. So until the actual situation affects you directly and you're now dealing with yourself, a lot of people don't realize how their personalities can come across. And this is that battle between attachment styles. Because when you're disorganized in it, and 1 minute you're here and the next minute you're here, what you end up being is like a mirror to your partner. So what I personally think, and what I've seen work for me, is that I got into that disorganized attachment style, and that there were times where I was really anxious and there were times where I was really avoidant. So no matter who you were with, whether they were anxious or avoidant, they got a dose of what it was like dealing with their attachment style. They got a dose of, oh man, like, why is this person so anxious? Why are they on my ass all the time? Like, why are they holding me to these things? Not realizing they were doing the same thing to you. Or now you're dealing with that avoidant and you're like, oh, they just gonna leave like that? Like, I wanted to talk about something and they just don't want to deal with it, and then we like never talk about it. Like, that's not right. But that's what they were doing. So now that they're getting it back, they're like, oh, I don't like how this feels. I think you need to go through that disorganized state in order to start being secure in your relationships, because you start not only holding yourself accountable, but holding your partner accountable for how their actions will bestow and be received by you. They see the real-time effects of their behavior hitting them in the face and getting involved in their relationship. I don't want to blame anybody for having their styles. Like, in all honesty, it comes from our childhood, our upbringing, and our experiences overall. Usually, it's it's developed by our caregivers and how they bestow those attachments onto us. Now, you have what's called your like avoidant caregivers. They kind of just left you to fend for yourself. Like, oh, you're grown, you can figure it out. You know, hey, you got to go through these things yourself. And they expected you to be independent at a very, very young age. They couldn't really meet you in that emotional space themselves. So if you had a disagreement, it was, I don't want to talk about it. Just don't worry about it, leave it alone. And you start to see like that personality with them kind of leave you on an island. And the unfortunate part about it is that you're looking for how you deal with your anxiety and how you deal with the situations that come to you. And these caregivers can't emotionally regulate themselves. So when you're looking at the avoidant caregiver, they're very much like, hey, like just go figure it out. Go figure it out. So you start to believe in yourself that like that's how I'm supposed to deal with my problems. If I feel some type of way and I have to have a conversation with somebody, like it's okay to just say no, like leave me alone. So you start to exhibit that in yourself because you're not learning yourself how to deal with your problems head on or how to deal with your problems in a collaborative sense. Now, having avoidant caregivers could also make you a very anxious person because you're craving that from them and you're craving that like, hey, like I need this, like help me. And they're just like, no, it's all good. Like you gotta figure it out yourself. Like, you know, like you're gonna face these challenges in life and like you gotta be able to deal with them. Hey, like this made me feel like this. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. So when you meet somebody and they're giving you like answers to things, your mind goes into overdrive. And now you're like in the sense where you're like, oh man, like I gotta hold on to this. So you become so addicted to having a person meet your emotional need that the second that they don't, you panic. And it's unrealistic to expect that your partner is going to be able to help you with every emotional thing that you go through in your life. There's a lot of things that you will have to at some point kind of figure out on your own because they're things that you're kind of curating in your head. But because you didn't have that from the avoidant caregivers, you either A, learn to be avoidant yourself, or B, if you meet somebody who is in tune and somebody who shows up for you, you will go into a state of anxious at some point because they can't be consistent all the time. And the hope is that at some point you regulate yourself in the middle. With a lot of the people who have those anxious attachment styles, they had caregivers who didn't really have a lot of like stability or like expectation of security in any way, shape, or form. Did they meet their child's needs? Sometimes. But they end up being very emotionally overwhelmed very quickly. And they make you feel responsible sometimes for their own needs not being met. So the very anxious people with anxious attachment styles have parents who probably at some point exhibited anxious attachment, where it was like, where are you? Like, why'd you do this? Hey, You know what I mean? So you start to feel like, oh man, like this is how I'm supposed to behave. This is how I'm supposed to be from an early age. What you'll end up seeing sometimes though, is those people with those anxious attachment styles become very avoidant as they get older because they just don't want to deal with the drama. So you'll see a lot of kids like they hit like their teens and they're just more like, I don't care, like, stop. So on the inverse, it's kind of funny because when you really think about it, the upbringing can do different things. Like that avoidant parent can make an anxious child, and that anxious parent can make an avoidant child. And then as they get older, they switch, and then that avoidant person becomes anxious when they start to see somebody or meet somebody who is also avoidant because they're trying to get away from the anxiousness that their parents describe. So to give a perfect example of this, I knew an individual who grew up in a household and their parents were very anxious people. They were very, where are you? What are you doing? Hey, like you said you'd be home at this time and you're not. Like you said this earlier. What did this mean? Like they were very, very anxious parents. And that person ended up being very avoidant. They didn't want to deal with the energy and the trauma and the stress and all of that stuff, because all that like emotional pressure does something to you, especially if you're unable to like understand it. So you get to a place where you're like, oh man, like I really don't want to deal with this right now. My mother is a perfect example of a person who was very anxious in her mentality. And I think it's whenever she felt like she was losing control, she really like 10 toes in the sand and would come at you. And you start developing this mentality of like, I don't want to deal with this right now. Like, this is a lot. I'm not going to deal with all this emotional energy that's coming through. I just want to chill. Let me regulate so that I can be there to be part of this conversation. And it's only after you go through the process and you bring it all down and you slow it down and you say, okay, cool, I'm ready to be here and I'm ready to talk. But at that point, she's already got it out of her system. She doesn't want to talk about it anymore. So you learn to kind of be the counter to that. And then you become that avoidant and say like, hey, like, it's not a big deal. And then I got into a relationship with a very avoidant individual, and it drove me freaking crazy because like they're now pulling themselves back, and I'm like, oh, I've been there. Like, I get it. I understand what you're going through, but like, we got to talk about this. Like, we got to get to that point. And it's like, you're almost like, you go to that place where like, now you're ready to actually discuss this thing. And then that person doesn't want to anymore. And now you're sitting there with the anxiety. And now you're starting to have anxious attachment to that person because you're like, yo, I just want that connection. Like, what the hell? So going through the process and really doing the work is the hard part, because it forces you to kind of confront yourself. It forces you to kind of stand in front of the mirror and like, what is the mirror telling you? And what I find with people who end up getting to that secure attachment style, it's because they've done that. They've been in situations where either they took it on themselves, they seek therapy, whatever it was, and at some point somebody showed them themselves in that mirror, and they had to figure out what they were going to do with it. And from then, it's when you really clue in and say, you know what? I understand how this can come across. I understand how my behavior can affect another person. I understand that this is not the best way to carry myself, because look at the state that it's putting me in, and look at the state that it puts this person that I care about in. And I don't want to do that to them. And you start to kind of make that shift. Like I was saying earlier, you have to address the issue. The anxious personality and the avoidant personality, as much as they may seem different, they do the same thing. They try to avoid the problem. They try to avoid the situation. If you're trying to deal with an attachment person, it's not a situation of like, oh, you didn't call me. You're not showing me the attention that I want. Oh my goodness, like, what the hell? This is falling apart. No, like, you have a fear of being abandoned, and we need to address why that is. Like, if you had a situation where you were abandoned in the past, I understand that, but am I doing that? Am I, as your partner, doing that to you? Or is it a preconceived idea that you have in your head because that trauma has been unresolved? It's just been buried. You've been stepping over that elephant in the room for a long time, and now it's starting to manifest in this relationship when I'm not doing those things that made you feel like that in your previous relationship or in your family dynamic or whatever it is. I'm not the one who's doing those things. I'm the one who's doing the opposite, but we're getting to the same place the second I am not consistent. And it's not realistic for me to be consistent all the time. It's almost like I have a track record of 90%, and that 10% is what's throwing you into the fire. That's not fair. That's something that you, as that individual, need to address, and we need to figure that out collectively. And you're going to have to do the inner work. And if it's the vice versa with the attachment style, where you need to be on your own and process everything by yourself, and no one can help you, well, me as your partner, I want to be here to help you. I want to be able to help you through these things. I want to be able to broker a trust with us where I feel like I could be a safe haven for you. And if I'm not providing that for you, please tell me where I'm failing in that, so I, as your partner, can try to help you through that, and in other ways show up. And really, it's just you've gone through situations where you had to kind of be under the gun, right? You have to look at certain things in your life, and you have to look at yourself and say, well, hey, I've been doing what I've been doing. I've been running from these issues for years, and it's not getting any better. I don't feel like I'm getting any closer to what I want overall. I'm in the same space. And here's this person like, hey, take my hand and let's go. And for some reason, you can't get to that point to do that. So regardless, you have to come back to your partner and say, hey, I get it. There's deeper things than what we have going on here. We can deal with this problem right now, but we also need to deal with the overall problem that's constantly leading us back to this, because you can't leave me on an island and you can't put me in a minefield. Either way, it's not fair to me as your partner. And once you can have those conversations and you can now work to changing that narrative, that's when you both become secure. Now, the last thing that's always going to happen is if you're an anxious type or you're an avoidant type, you're going to find each other. And it's called the anxious avoidant trap. It always happens. And it's hard. It's hard to be in. It's hard to navigate, because what you both want is what the other person detests. As the avoidant, you don't want somebody on your ass. And as the attachment, you don't want somebody to leave you. So what's hard is that you can stick to your laurels that you normally do, where it's like, I'm just going to continue to be anxious. I'm going to continue to be avoidant. But if you can communicate and you could really break it down to your partner and explain why you do what you do, and you guys can talk through these things, it really is one of the best relationships for you. I personally think, in my opinion, just based on my experiences, you have to experience both. You have to be with an anxious style, you have to be with an avoidant style, and you need to be able to kind of sit back and dissect it and say, well, I didn't like this and I didn't like that, so let's try to change those things internally. And you really have to dig down. You got to do the work, guys. If we're not doing the work, you're going to sit in that space and you're going to think it's normal. When you're battling these dynamics, you have to be able to manage your like external influences. There's always going to be people out there that are telling you, hey, like, at the end of the day, here's what we're going to do, and they're going to try to justify you doing what you're doing. Oh, well, he pissed you off, so if you want to leave, that's fair. You shouldn't have to deal with that. Oh, he's not glorifying you, or he's not pacifying you because you have a problem and he's just trying to run away. Like, you don't want that. Like, no, it's not. You have to be able to stop the noise and say, great, I understand you're looking out for me, and that's great, but like, I can also understand that it's causing my partner something that they want to withdraw. It shouldn't be a situation where I'm coming to them and I'm like trying to express myself and they just want to run away. Like, maybe it's how I'm expressing myself to them. Maybe it's too much. Maybe I got to scale it down a bit. Maybe I have to meet them where they are for some things. So you have to really be able to kind of like look at the external like influences that are kind of telling you to sway yes or no in either direction, and puts you in that space. You also have those negative people who are going to reinforce whatever it is because they know it's a detriment to you, and they're going to try to keep you in those spaces. They want you to remain anxious because they're anxious themselves. They want you to be avoidant because now they have an avoidant partner. So when your partner pisses you off, hey, forget him, let's go out and do this. Or when your girlfriend pisses you off, hey, screw her, man, boys night. Like, and then you don't address the things that you need to address. You don't have those hard conversations. And we also have to remember that our parents, though they may have been the start to building these attachment styles with us, they had their own struggles. They had their own challenges as well. They were doing the best that they can with the things that they have, and the challenges that we're facing right now, the challenges they had to face, and maybe they just didn't get to that point. So we can't just fully blame them, because I hate when people are like, oh, I'm in this because my parents were anxious people and it made me want to be an avoidant personality. I'm like, great, I get it, but that's in the past. You are a grown adult with your own uh your own cerebral cortex and your own way of processing and your own life and your own decision making capabilities. So for you to remain in this space, it's on you. It has nothing to do with them at this point in time. You have to do the work. Yeah, foundation was laid, but you have half of what you need to be secured. You got half of it from them. You need to figure out the other half on your own and keep it moving. And maybe by doing that, you're not going to help them heal and grow, because maybe they just didn't have the guidance that you had. Maybe they didn't have the experience or the exposure to things that you had before. They were dealing with their own troubles and traumatic situations and their stuff from their childhood. So we can't just blame them, right? They did what they could. They did the best that they could with what they had. And as a full-grown adult, now it is our responsibility to do different. Now also be aware, because society is going to try to teach you that being a victim in a scenario is normal. It's going to try to teach you that, oh no, it's your partner's sole responsibility to calm you down when you're in an anxious state. Oh, it's your partner's sole responsibility to like bring you back when you need space. It's not. It's no one's responsibility to deal with your own emotional states and your own emotional annotation and fluctuations. You're the only person who's actually responsible to deal with that. Now, if you have a partner who wants to help, that's great, but it's not their responsibility. Is it nice that they could help you? Sure. But deep down inside, these are things you're going to have to deal with, because if you don't have that person in your life, then it's giving annotation for you to be like, oh, well, I just can't deal with this. And those people will now just jump from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, trying to find somebody who's going to calm them down. You're a grown adult. If you haven't learned to manage your emotions in how many years you've been on this planet, that's something that you need to work on, because those impulsive emotional outbursts are what leads to a lot of the negative things that happen to people. If we look at criminals, if we look at people who commit assaults, it's all emotion. It's, I haven't been able to deal with whatever it is that I'm dealing with, and this is my outburst. This is what leads to a lot of domestic situations. This is what it leads to a lot of violent crimes. This leads to just inconsistencies in life, because you're constantly chasing that either emotional high or that emotional release, that you're unable to do the work to find yourself. So now you're putting it in the hands of another person, and they're going to fail at some point. And we can't expect that of anybody, because they have their own things that they're trying to figure out and navigate too. So you don't need to find a person who's going to help you deal with this. You have to learn to deal with it yourself. Because if you don't even have a roadmap as to how it's supposed to work, how do you expect to have that person find it for you? They're not a mind reader. They're not a psychic. You don't even know what you need. So how are they supposed to know? You may get lucky and find somebody who can understand you. You may find somebody who's gone through similar things, and they can help you by giving advice to how they did their stuff. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be their responsibility to do anything for you. You've got to find it in yourself. And the one other thing that we got to be very, very careful of is going through our trauma bonding, because you may just be having that emotional need met because somebody can meet you on it. They have a trauma themselves, might be similar to yours, and you guys are able to bond on that scenario, and that's great. A lot of friendships are born based on trauma bonding, but that doesn't mean it's going to carry you through the end, because what happens is when one person heals and the other's left in that traumatic state, where does your friendship go from there? It needs to grow on something bigger than that, and relationships need to grow on something bigger than that. Can it start with that? Sure. We both have something in common. We both went through a situation where we're trying to come out of. So we both have that joining factor. But if that's the only bond that you have, at some point it's gonna fall apart, because somebody's gonna get better. It just is what it is. Somebody's going to get better, or somebody's going to find somebody else that's helping them to heal. And they're going to gravitate towards that person because it's what they want. And you may just be sitting in the same place like, well, now I have nobody to like bond with over this. Misery loves company, but it doesn't necessarily make good company. So be very, very aware of some of these factors and keep these things in mind. If you're anxious, if you're avoidant, I get it. It's hard and it's not necessarily something you want to deal with. We want to get to those secured places. That's what we want. But we have to do the work. We have to address the things that got us there and learn to regulate ourselves in order so that we can show our partners how we need to be regulated, so then they can help. If it's, hey, I just need a little processing time first after this argument, but I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about it on this day. We're going to talk about it later today. I just need to calm it down. That puts your partner in a state of, okay, this will be addressed and we will resolve it. This is what you need. I can do that for you. And the more they do that for you, the more you start to be able to trust that it's going to be done. You'll be able to trust that, yes, they're going to give me the space to process it, and then we can come back and we can talk about it. And then when you have those conversations and they go well, you'll need less time. You'll come to a place where it's like, no, I know how they are. I know that they're not going to come at me negatively. I know that if they say something, they're saying it out of a place of love and not a place of like of detest. I know that they're willing to be patient with me. So if I need that little extra time, they don't mind giving it to me. But then you'll have an understanding of who they are as a person and say, well, you know what? No, they're not going to judge me. They're not going to do this. They're not going to do that. So what am I afraid of? And then once you start brokering those things, you build together, you build trust, you build a care for each other, you come from a place of reasoning and understanding because you understand that your partner understands you. And that becomes a beautiful thing, guys. So let's start getting secure. Let's start doing the work. Let's start putting our best selves forward for the people around us. And don't be afraid to address the problems. If you need that extra time, or you need that extra space, or you need to slow it down, or you need to pick it up, communicate with people, let them know, and you'll see how people will show up for you. I hope this was able to help people. I might do a breakdown on these a little bit more in depth and add some personal stories to them as a person who's kind of gone through all of these cycles already. If you're struggling to navigate this stuff, get the help that you need. Therapy is huge. I think a lot of people don't go to it because of shame, or don't go to it because they're unwilling or afraid of unlocking those things in themselves. I was that person, but I'm telling you, it is so beneficial. With that, guys, I will be back with more content. It is coming. I've hit a bit of a snag because I'm trying to reduce some stuff, but I'll be here, guys. Keep healing, keep going on the journey, and trust the process. And with that, protect your heart.